Are you tired of never having enough materials to craft what you want? Are you tired of AFKing for hours at a tree farm just praying you can get enough dyes for crafting? And are you tired of your dripstone farm just never quite being fast enough for you? Well, look no further, because in today's episode we solve all of our problems. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode 6 of our SkyFactory 5 playthrough. Between last episode and this, I worked off camera a little more than I expected and managed to get ourselves a crafting terminal as well as some basic storage setups. I also AFK'd overnight, so we should have the dyes ready to complete everything that I have planned for today's episode. Without further ado, we start out today crafting a bunch of inscribers for some very basic and early on auto crafting of processors. In order to create patterns, we need a pattern encoding terminal, which requires these blank patterns to encode a pattern into. We simply create a pattern for each of the circuits and a pattern for each of the processors. Now, in order to save channels, we're going to be using one pattern provider for 4 inscribers. One of the setups will be used for circuits, while the others will be used to create processors. For now, we are simply just going to hook it up to our existing line, as each pattern provider only uses one channel on this edition. Shortly after crafting a few more inscriber presses, we can throw one in each of the inscribers to complete our starter setup. Now getting started with one of the mods I added. This is Advanced AE. The first thing we are crafting from this mod is the reaction chamber. The reaction chamber basically gives us a far simpler way to automate world interactions like creating fluix or charged Certus quartz. To get started with auto crafting, we need a couple of crafting units. I am starting off with 3 individual crafting units so we can craft 3 different recipes at the same time. These units are simply one 4K crafting storage, a crafting co-processing unit, and a crafting monitor. Finally, after all of this time, we should be able to request circuits. And as you can see from the top, we successfully crafted a printed engineering circuit. The next step we want to work towards is auto crafting items, and for that we're going to need molecular assemblers. And after a few minutes of crafting, we have our first of many molecular assemblers. To go along with the assembler, we're also going to need to craft an extended pattern provider from the other mod I added called Extended AE. Now, the amazing part of the extended pattern provider is that it has 4 times the capacity of a normal pattern provider. We can simply put any ordinary crafting pattern inside here and it'll craft. Now, one of the first things I like to personally set up and craft are the blank patterns, as we're going to need them for every single auto crafting recipe in the future. And would you look at that? Just like that, we successfully created 40 blank patterns. Now, wasn't that easy? Now, the next step I did was simply automating the creation of all of the ores and dyes. Now, thankfully, after recent updates to Applied Energistics 2, we can now auto-craft essence through patterns. Now, after a lot of crafting and some time, we have ourselves a premium furnace. Now, let's get to automating this thing. To automate a furnace, we simply need a pattern provider, an export bus, and an import bus. After messing around with this for a while, I found out the sides do matter. The pattern provider needs to be on the top of the furnace, an export bus for providing fuel on the left or the right, and an import bus on the bottom of the furnace to import all of the smelted materials back into the Applied Energistics system. The next thing I'm doing is throwing in a bunch of acceleration cars to speed everything up, because who doesn't love speed? The faster, the better. In order to reach the end goal of today's video, we are going to need to set up an automated clay system. Going off my past experiences, I expected this to be a little more complex than it ended up being, thankfully. Simply put, a wooden hopper going into an interface with a barrel on top of the hopper. On the back of the barrel, we put a fluid hopper for water, and on the top of that barrel, we put an item hopper and a chest for the sand input. Now, at the same time here, I wanted to get access to water for the Applied Energistics system, so we put down a small 64 bucket tank with another fluid hopper going into that with a storage bus on the fluid tank. It was at this moment when I was just about to get ready to test everything, and boom, the game crashes. I was praying that this was simply just a simple crash, but every time I opened the world, we instantly crashed. After being quite upset, I went into a creative world to try and recreate the crash. But no matter what combination of events I tried, I could not get the world to crash, creating setups identical to the one in our world. I was pretty sad at this moment, not knowing what to do, so I launched the backup I made a day prior just to see how far I would be reset, praying for the absolute best. And sadly, upon the world loading, I instantly knew that going back a day just wasn't going to be an option for me. So I began to dig deeper and deeper until finally there was some light. After removing Ex Nihilo Sequentia and its partner mod, we had finally gotten back into our world. At this point, we had lost all barrels and any progression from those two mods, so creative mode didn't seem too cheaterish for me quite yet. Now, upon further investigation, I figured out that we crashed when liquid experience from the create mod was put into the Ex Nihilo barrel, causing an instant crash. I spent a long time trying to figure out where in the world we were getting this experience from, thinking that maybe there was a glitch somewhere. I tried new tags, different storage bus configurations, disconnecting the bus and reconnecting it until finally it dawned on me. I have one import bus set up. Oh, from this furnace. Yep, all of this trouble is from the furnace. In all of my mod pack playthroughs, I can honestly say I've never ran into this issue. And after some more time tinkering around, figuring out how to prevent this from ever happening again in the future, we simply just set up a trash can with the storage bus to filter out create mod experience. Finally, after 4 hours of debugging and problem solving, we came to a solution, and now it's time we continue advancing onwards. The first thing on our to-do list is creating barrels. I felt for some reason that it would be cheating to give me barrels back. Plus, we have a wood farm, so why cheat? And with 20 barrels, we are good to go. Now, creating the recipe for clay is quite simple. 1 sand equals 1 clay block. And with a couple of buckets of water, we were finally set to try and auto-craft some clay. Now, at first, it was hard to tell if it was even working. We could see sand go in the chest and out of the chest, but there's no sound of anything happening. Upon getting back to the applied energistic system, we could see that our request for clay was already complete and that this farm had far exceeded my expectations for speed. Now it was finally time to create the ultimate dye farm. But first, we need to craft a lot of items. This dye farm requires a whopping 496 dripstone, 496 dripstone blocks, 496 fluid hoppers, 512 barrels, and a brand new system for creating sand, which we haven't even started yet. So while we're waiting for bricks to smelt, I got started with creating electric motors from the Create mod, and that's how we're going to be automating sand. To do this, we needed 12 mechanical crafters and a random assortment of items. So after destroying our whole setup, I threw down the 12 crafters in hopes that it wouldn't be overstressed by our one water wheel, and thankfully, that was not the case. Next, we needed a create wrench to set up the crafters correctly, and an output chest for the items when it's done crafting. A couple of machines later, when we had all of the resources necessary to build our first of many electric motors. With the first motor, I wanted to be able to craft motors faster. So I hooked it up to the crafters and seen what real speed was. And with that, I created another motor, which crafted in a much faster manner. After all of this time, it was finally that time to say goodbye to our second automated thing in this world. This simple dye farm was critical in our rapid advancements, and it is my recommendation to build one in your world if you're just starting out. Finally, we had everything ready to go for the new dye farm, and after a bit of layout work, we got right to it. Simply place a dripstone, and then place a block below that and build out 7 blocks with dripstone. Then at the end of the 7th block, go down 1 more block and back out 8 blocks with the dripstone. You then mirror that on the opposite side. Simply grab your builder's wand and extend that another 15 blocks horizontally, and that should be the dripstone blocks done. Next, you are going to want to place down barrels in front of the last piece of dripstone. Ensure that you have a block above it so that when it rains, the water won't collect in it. Place these barrels all the way across. Then grab your fluid hoppers and place them going into each barrel. Next, we're going to grab the builder's wand again and place them all the way out to the end of the dripstone blocks. Take your barrels, place them on top of each fluid hopper. Again, use the builder's wand to speed up this process. You'll thank me later. We then go to the top, decorate it a bit so the water doesn't flow off the edges, and build some blocks so that the water won't flow down instantly. These cobblestone blocks are critical to ensure the water flows properly. Place down all 15 sources of water and go to the center block and vein miner. If done correctly, your water will flow down in straight lines. You then do the same with the other side, and they should look identical. Then, just like the other farm, place dripstone underneath every dripstone block, and your farm will start filling with fluids. As you can see, by the time I ran up to the front, every single barrel was already full. Now to automate the sand. For this, we are using the Create mod millstones. Simply put one down, put one behind it that's one block above it like this, and an andesite funnel on top of it. Then place a chute on top of this top millstone and a barrel above that. We are then simply going to make a cobblestone generator using that barrel we just put down. Then put down 3 cogs, our electric motor, and a flux point. Turn the motor to full speed and you should be making sand and flint. Using cyclic item cables, we export the items out of the millstone into a chest so that we can sort the sand from the flint. For now, we're just going to trash the flint by using a filter data card, and boom, the flint is gone. And as you can see, all of our barrels turned into dyes. Then on the front of the barrels, we'll use the item cables again to take out whatever dye is inside, and for now, we're just going to store it in a chest. And just like that, our new dye farm is complete. This farm should be roughly 30 times faster than the last one, and the best part is, it can still be expanded. With the completion of this, I'm going to wrap up the episode. Let me know in the comments below what you think of the new style of editing, as I have put a ton of work into creating this episode. If you like this video, be sure to check out the whole series and subscribe so you don't miss any future content. Until next time, I'm out.